Hey guys, today we're going to be building a 6S quad with a Mamba F7 stack and iFlight motors with a frame that I got off of Speedy FPV for like really cheap, and then just a CADX and Rush FPV for my FPV, and I'm using a FlySky receiver, so I'm going to be using this. So I'm going to go unpack everything so that we can start building. Okay, it looks a lot better once unpacked. So, I have used this frame before in my previous quad. It's really great. It's super easy to build. My only complaint is that you can't buy spare arms, even though they make it so you can easily replace them. So, first step is I'm going to go ahead and build the frame and show you how to do it while I'm building it. Okay, so to assemble your frame, you want to take this bottom plate and you'll put it above, and you're going to put a screw through. These are the 10mm screws, and it includes these lock nuts as well. You want to stick it through your arm, and then this other bottom plate, which goes on the other side, and I put that in the wrong hole. So, and then it goes just like that. So then it's going to be like this. It may be a little hard to see, but the screw's going to go through both of them. And then you just put a lock nut on the other side, and you do that for all the 4 holes here, and then all 4 arms as well. So that's basically how you assemble the frame. It's super easy, and really anybody can figure it out. So I'm just going to go finish up this frame, and I'll see you guys when we get to the motors. Okay guys, so once you have assembled your frame, you can take your motors, and then you can start mounting them. So I'm using 2207 1950 kV motors, and they are 6S, made by iFlight. So it's super simple. You just put your first screw in, and then you get it in. You don't want to tighten it all the way, so then you can still move it and adjust. And then once you have all your screws in, you want to really lock it down. And I'd suggest using Loctite, which I have done. See, I've used some Loctite, and I don't recommend the red Loctite, because it will be really hard to get off. And it's just the blue one, it comes off with, if you heat it up, it would come off, so that's just nice to do. And I'm just going to mount this one with you guys, and I'm just going to actually bring this up here, and then there. So now you guys can see a bit better, and then you want to just align it and then screw it in. The first one's always kind of the hardest, but once you get it going, it should be pretty good. And make sure that it's in straight, because if it's in crooked, it will destroy the threads in the motor. And that is not good. You never want that to happen. Or else you can only put like 3 or how many threads you destroyed in. So then it's also, you want to make sure that your wires are coming out on the arm, so that they're not coming out on the side over here. Because then you'd have to wrap it around. That's just doesn't look as good. So that's basically it. You can put 4 on if you want, or you can just leave it as 2 or 3. I'm gonna put 4 on, and I'm gonna mount the rest of the motors, and I'll see you guys when we get ready to tin the ESC. Okay guys, so now we have mounted our motors, and as you can see, I put some washers on there. I put 2 washers so that it wouldn't touch the windings. And that's very important, because if it touches the windings and it breaks through the insulation, it could cause a short and then break your ESC and your motor. So here is what came with the Mamba F722 stack. So it came with this solder board that you can like practice soldering on, 55 amp ESC, and an F7 Mamba flight controller, gummies, mounting hardware, extra cables, XT60, and a capacitor. And it also came with some like 14 gauge wire, I'm pretty sure. Now it is time to put gummies inside of our ESC so that we can mount it and it will be nicely secured. Okay guys, so for mounting your gummies, if you're ever having a bit of trouble, just take some dental floss, right? And then you want to kind of get it like this, so then there's like a loop. You want to stick it through one of your screw holes, put it in the groove, just like that. You pull, and then it comes up, and boom. It's just like that. You have your gummy installed. If you're ever having trouble, just use this nice trick. It can save you like a lot of time, actually. So I'm just gonna put the rest on, and then I'm gonna put it on the frame so we can tin the pads for the motor wires. So I've gone ahead and temporarily mounted the ESC with the nylon nuts that they gave us and the long screws, which is super nice. And I put some gummy spacers underneath. And so now what we want to go ahead and do is we want to turn on our soldering iron, and we want to pre-tin these pads, which means we put some solder on so that it makes it a whole lot easier when we're putting our motor wires on, so that we don't have to add solder while we're putting them on. Now our soldering iron is nice and hot. We should get our flux. So this is our flux right here. It looks a little brownish, but that's okay. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and take some flux, and then we just want to put some flux on the pads. You can use like a flux pen or whatever you want. Just whatever gets the flux on the pad. Or you could use like the wire itself. That works too. Make sure you also get the capacitor holes over here, so that your capacitor can go in there. Okay, now our soldering iron is nice and hot, so we can start soldering. Alright, so I'm just going to dip it in the soldering iron in the flux so it cleans the tip nicely. And then we want to go ahead, I'm going to get these motor wires out of the way. We want to go ahead and bring our soldering iron on the pad, and we want to heat it up until we hear the flux to start to sizzle. Once it starts to sizzle, then we can start adding solder to the pad, and we know that it will transfer over to the pad. It has to get nice and hot, and adding flux helps dissipate the heat, which means that it will heat up a bit faster. So just adding some solder to the pad. Ooh. Okay, so if it takes a while, if your ESC takes a while to solder to, that actually means that's a very good ESC. It means it has good heat dissipation. So I'm just going to rub it around so it gets nice and everywhere on the pad. Okay, so now we have that pad tinned. Let's go and tin this pad as well for our capacitor. Alright, and it's okay if these two bridge because they're both positive, and it's okay if these two bridge over here because they're also both negative. I might increase my temperature a little bit. If you're ever having trouble, just increase your temperature, and it will make it a lot easier to solder to. So my temperature is increasing right now, which will make it a lot easier. Because the ground is like everywhere, so the heat dissipates even more. Okay, now see, I have mine at 840 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's melting a lot faster. And we're just going to get the capacitor pad as well. Okay, so that's how you tin a pad. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the motor pads. I'm not going to do that on camera because that's just going to take a while. And I'll see you guys when this is all tinned up. Okay guys, I have pre-tinned all of the motor pads, and now I'm going to go and pre-tin our flight controller pads. So I'm not going to straight up solder on the ESC right now because I just want to let it cool down for a bit. It already is cool, but I'm just going to take a little break on it. So the first thing we're going to pre-tin is our video transmitter. So the pads that we need for that, it says on this handy instruction manual. It's going to be a little hard to show on camera, so I'm just going to point out where we need it. So for the transmitter, ours does not take 5 volts, it takes 9 volts. And the 9 volt pin is right, let's see, where is it? It's right here. So 9 volt pin is right here. And then we also need the VTX TX3 ground. Yeah, and ground. Okay, so and then the VTX is right here. TX3, and then ground is here. Okay guys, I'm sorry, my camera stopped recording when I was soldering on my VTX and I didn't notice, but I'm glad I caught it before I soldered on my camera wires. So, again, this is my 9 volts, my ground, my smart audio, and my video output. Okay, so, and then for the camera, we have, so the first is going to be camera, and then we have ground, and 5 volts right here. Next, we have up our receiver, and we can tin those pads right now. I just gotta find them on the handy dandy manual. So we have RX1 right over here. We have TX1 as well. We have ground and 5 volts. Okay. That is our flight controller all ready to go. We don't need to touch this anymore. All you need to do is plug it in to our ESC and it's done. So our next steps, we have to still solder these wires to our receiver, and we still have to solder the motor wires to our ESC, which would really help if we want this thing to fly, which I really do. So, and I actually don't have a smoke stopper, so I'm actually just going to be using a power supply and limit the amps to like 0.3, so in case anything bad happens, I can instantly just turn it off, and then we're all good. So, I'm going to come back to this in a bit, and I'll hook up the receiver officially and do the motor wires, and then we should be all good. Alright, we can solder up our receiver. I apologize if the image is ever a bit blurry. This is my first time using a SLR camera. Our 5 volt goes right here on the one very right. And then comes PPM, which I'm guessing is the telemetry, and S-bus. That one was really hard to film, so I just skipped it, and then ground. Now, we have all of our wires nice and secure. So let me just show you what that looks like. Okay, so that's the closest I can get it for my camera to still focus on it. So it looks like that, and I just took it through the small holes that were there. So that's basically your receiver. It's not too difficult. And the receiver also came with some heat shrink. Here's the heat shrink that came with it. Maybe a little hard to see on camera because it's clear. So it's basically some heat shrink, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows what heat shrink is. You slip it over. I'm just gonna put over the antenna wires, and this is just to insulate the receiver so it doesn't accidentally touch anything and then short it out. So it basically just goes like that, and you just take like a lighter or heat gun or whatever you want to use, and then it just shrinks it and then keeps everything nice and tight. I'm just gonna go quickly shrink that out of camera because it's gonna be annoying to try and film that. Nice. Alright, let's solder the XD60. The first step when you're going to solder on your XC60 is measuring how long you want it to be. So this right now is a bit too long, so I'm going to cut it a bit shorter, but I'm actually going to cut my negative one a bit shorter than my positive one, so then I can have it coming out at an angle. I'll cut the size, so then we have it like that. We'll have it like that, just coming out on the side. but I think I can give it a little tug. Yep, that's not going anywhere. And then, oh, that's super hot. Then we have our positive, that'll just go like that. Okay, so the negative side was it was really hard to melt, but this side should be a lot easier. I'm still at 850 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the max temperature for my soldering iron. Okay, come on. Way easier to pretend pads than it is to actually solder onto them. Luckily, the motor pads, or the motor wires, are a lot easier to solder. Come on. I mean, it is soldered on, but not well. Like, at all. It's on there, but it's really horrible. It'll hold, but does not look pretty. I'm just gonna add some solder to it. You know what? Screw it. Okay, yeah, just add some solder. Oh, shoot, that's about to come off and fling solder everywhere. Okay. That looks like a good connection now. I'm just going to quickly take my bike bump and blow some air onto it so it cools down, because that is super hot. Now it's time to solder on our capacitor. I've kind of bent it in a shape where it can nicely fit around our wires. I'm just going to grab this because I accidentally burnt my finger. Well, I was trying to do this before, but the clip was bad, so I just deleted it. So, this is take 2. Come on. I'm trying not to push too hard because I might break my soldering iron tip. Okay, finally. Okay, we finally got one end of the capacitor on. Now it is time to do the other, the negative, which is a lot harder. And not just is it harder to solder to, I also have this black XC60 wire, which will make my life miserable. Because I didn't put my capacitor on first, which I should have done. Alright, I'm doing this off camera. I'm sorry, guys. For the motor wires, when you are bringing them, you just really want to cut them to length. So you want to go like that. Press them down nicely. I like to put it so that these are in order, and then bring them to the last one, and that's where I'm going to cut mine. Just like that. Super simple. And what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to take some of this and put it around my motor wires. So you're going to want to take scissors. So I'm just going to have it go from here to here. So like around this long. And let's see if that's good. Okay, so that should really protect it if a prop bends down and starts hitting it. And starts hitting your motor wires. Okay, so once you have your motor wires all trimmed up and everything, you can just go ahead and solder it straight on. And make sure that your motor wires are also tinned and have some flux on the pad and on the wire so that it can bond better. I should heat up the pad first, because that would be very smart if I did that. There we go. That is one on. And we have motor number 4 hooked up. So motor, I'm pretty sure you might know this, but motor 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay guys, I've gone ahead and started up the rest of the motors and put this stuff over it and then put electrical tape. And we're basically ready. I still have to, I'm going to drill 2 holes to mount this thing because the frame, well, I thought it would have the mounting holes for it, but it didn't. And then I just have a mount for this in my room. I'm going to get that in a bit. But, so, I'm going to bind my receiver or my transmitter and my goggles, and we're just gonna plug it in with a power supply as like a test. But before we do that, I'm gonna take a voltage meter and check it for short circuits, because that would be really bad if we plug it in and there's a short. So we take our two tips. If they touch, then they beep. So we're just gonna stick it in here, and we have no short. See if we touch, a beep. No beep. So that means that we should, in theory, be good to go. At first, I'm just gonna power it with 16 volts, and then amp up the voltage to a 6S battery. Plug this in. Now, and it didn't get the second beep because we haven't put it in beta flight yet. So now, I'm going to amp it up. There we go. Oh, my video transmitter, that's what's taking the power. There we go. Okay, so let's set it to 22 volts. Right now it's taking 0.3 amps, so it should all be okay. I'm pretty sure that's just my video transmitter taking the amps. Now it's at the power of a 6S battery, and it all seems good. We have a receiver, and I'm going to plug in my goggles and see if it can find the transmitter. So, plug it in, turn on my goggles, and I'm using a SkyZone Cobra X version 2, and we have video. Amazing. Yep, first try and we have video. Okay, and here I'm going to quickly turn off my power supply so I can bind my receiver and transmitter. Alright guys, so I have gone ahead and mounted my video transmitter just with some double-sided sticky Velcro stuff. And then I put my receiver wires on zip ties with heat shrink on them so they don't come off, which usually, I've never done that before, but I've seen people do it, so I hope that holds well. And this camera, I 3D printed camera plate for it, but my other one broke, so I only have one right now. And I'm just going to do a quick time-lapse of me building, and I'm just going to do a quick time-lapse of me putting the whole frame together, so you guys will be able to see that. And I also designed this antenna holder that just goes onto the top of the frame. It's worked out very well on my other drone, so that's why I'm using it again. So, I'm going to get into the time-lapse. Hey guys, it's Future Me here. I just wanted to show you guys that I actually hooked up the receiver wrong, and now I'm going to show you guys the right way. So all you have to do is swap the yellow and blue wire on the board, and you should be good to go. So to fix your receiver, all you have to do is take your S-bus that I originally hooked up over here, and then just put it to RX1, which is the receiving pin, because I accidentally swapped them. And that's really all you have to do. And make sure that your blue wire or yellow, doesn't really matter which one you use, goes to your S-bus on your receiver. It's really that simple. I am kind of embarrassed I made that mistake. So, before we take off, let's just see if we pitch left, then the drone goes left. Pitch right, drone goes right. Pitch forward, goes forward. Pitch back, and goes back. Alright. So, now you can back up a bit, because now we can start to... Oh, it's an now it's in angle mode, so now it won't go wherever, because it's a lot harder to fly in acro mode when you don't have goggles on. So I'd back up a bit, because well, it goes up way faster than my other drone. There we go. Okay, I think that's a success. Now, I just gotta get my second camera plate, and I can start flying FPV.